turn now to the rest of the world, because Trump's victory has created fresh uncertainty among leaders abroad regarding how his return to the White House will shake up defense and trade ties globally. Our next guest says Trump's victory will heighten geopolitical risks. Joining us now for more is Tina Fordham. She is geopolitical strategist and founder at Fordham Global Foresight in London. So, Tina, one thing that you point out, and I think that a lot of people need to remember, is that this victory by Donald Trump did not take place in a vacuum, right? You've got countries around the world where voters voted out the incumbent. France, the UK, Japan, if not the ruling leader, then the ruling party or the coalition. You talk about how whenever a winning electoral formula appears, it gets copied fast. To what extent was the U.S. election a copy of what we've already seen abroad, or was it a new formula that Trump 2.0 has created here?
Well, this is the postmortem that we're all going to be conducting. It was remarkable to see Vice President Harris's speech, by the way, just moments ago, where she was gracious in defeat, and we now need to see how magnanimous Trump can be in victory, because that tone that is set by the United States and by our democracy, our institutions, and the transfer of power is going to feed back into what I said in my note, which you quoted, about winning electoral formulas being copied. Now, another example of a shock political outcome was Brexit, of course, not anticipated by markets or the polls, but one which nobody ended up wanting to repeat. I think by contrast, what Trump has pulled off is something remarkable. It is a domestic political realignment. And from where I sit, talking to our CEO clients all day today, a lot of questions about what Trump's first moves will be when it comes to global trade, tariffs, and we're working with the conflicts that have plagued us the last couple of years. We'd like to be hopeful, but any change of this scale is going to translate into more volatility, in my view.
Right. When our editor-in-chief, John Micklethwaite, interviewed Trump just a couple of weeks ago, Tina, Trump implied that he had spoken with Vladimir Putin. He wouldn't say it outright. But he has also said that he would end the war pretty much immediately. Are we anticipating any kind of movement on that come January, and perhaps concessions even from Ukraine in order to make that happen?
Well, Trump has said on numerous occasions, hasn't he, that he would end the war in Ukraine on day one. Now, that isn't going to be possible. Zelensky, the prime minister of Ukraine, has already talked about the need to make concessions. If there's any reason to be optimistic, it's in 2025. It is that diplomacy will probably start to happen. There just won't be a way to replace the U.S. military aid, even if Europe starts to act faster and kind of unfreeze some of those Russian assets to increase funding. But the most important signal on that front, and why we talk about heightened geopolitical risk, is that if Putin is able to, to retain the territory that he's taken by force, that gives a signal not just to Russia, but to other countries that have bits of territory they'd quite like to have back again, as they see it, to do so.
Yeah, one country in the Pacific, for instance. How much do you look to Trump 1.0 as a guide for how he will conduct foreign policy? Or will the second time around be different, because his most important criteria for, say, Secretary of State or cabinet will be loyalty as opposed to expertise?
So my sense is that Trump is going to focus on his domestic agenda. At least that's where his personal priorities will lie. In terms of who will form his cabinet and his key appointees, the fact is that there aren't very many of his the previous people in his administration who are willing to join again. So I think Pompeo, Bob Lighthizer, just to name a few, but we will see a lot of jockeying for position going forward. I think one area where Trump can do a lot more is on the Supreme Court. If two justices retire, Samuel Alito, Clarence Thomas perhaps, Trump will be able to influence the way that the court functions for decades. So there are a lot of ways that he can make a tremendous impact, and his priorities will be something that we are all going to be assessing and evaluating and trying to read the tea leaves on.